Welcome. Oh, are we on?
Yes.
Right. Welcome to all the members of the public who we have in the audience and to those listening on YouTube. We live stream from this meeting, a recording of which will be available afterwards on the Council's YouTube channel. In addition, I have to read out under local authorities, executive arrangements, meetings and access to information, England, regulations 2012. Other people may film, record, tweet or blog from this meeting. Use of any such images of sound recordings is not under the Council's control. Any councillor who wishes to speak should raise their hand and your request will be noted. You'll be asked to speak in turn by me, and then you may turn on your microphone. Once you finish speaking, would you please turn off your microphone? Otherwise, other people can't speak. Please note there will be a recorded vote for item number 9 on the agenda, the 2023-24 budget and financial strategy. When the roll call is required, councillors' names will be called out alphabetically by the monitoring officer. Please confirm your vote by saying for, against, or abstain. In respect of voting on any other item, when asked by me, councillors should raise their hand to indicate how they wish to vote. If a roll call is requested, councillors' names will, as previously, to be called. A councillor may raise a point of order or make a personal explanation at any time by raising their hand, and I'll hear them immediately, and my ruling on that matter will be final. We will be having a short comfort break at an appropriate time. I would also point out to you, if you leave the meeting during a debate, you will not be able to vote. Do we understand that? Right. I would now like to ask Kay Carter from the Dyslexia Association to lead us in a moment of reflection. Thank you, Kay.
Okay, just checking that's on, isn't it? Brilliant, thank you. Well, firstly, thank you very much for inviting me to give the moment of reflection. Now, I think we can all agree that humans come in lots of different shapes and sizes. And whilst we are all different, we are similar in the fact that we all possess the ability to communicate with each other. Now, we predominantly communicate with each other through the spoken and written word and through our language and our gestures. Now, learning your particular language and how to read and write is also prone to some differences, in that some of us do not quite learn in similar ways. Some of us have a difference which can present as a difficulty to learn to read or to write or to process the sounds within our spoken language. And when you have a difference and a difficulty in learning to read and spell fluently, it can often lead to a specific mismatch with your cognitive abilities. And these differences can be lifelong, and they can run in your family, and they can be on a spectrum of severity. And these differences are collectively known as dyslexia. Now, identifying dyslexia should usually occur and usually occurs when you are at school. However, because some of these differences are only just beginning to be fully understood, many older dyslexic adults may have experienced challenges in their educational experience and attainment, and this in turn can affect self-esteem and life chances. And this is all because of a difference in the way that we learn, and a difference which can be genetic. Now, we do know there are many gifted dyslexics out there in the world. Our patron is Sir Paul Smith, so we know that. And some adults are incredibly resilient. And dyslexia is starting to be seen much more positively and sometimes being described by the young people I work with as being their superpower. Now, being able to know and build on your strengths and weaknesses is crucial for resilience, for your self-awareness, and to live to your talents. And therefore, early identification, screening, and diagnosis of dyslexia can provide you with these tools. We at the Dyslexia Association, we provide specialist services for children and adults, including diagnosis and workplace needs assessments. And we've provided this support in Nottinghamshire for over 50 years. And we've now expanded to provide services across the UK. And helping improve the lives of dyslexics and all of those with co-occurring neurodiverse conditions is actually at the core of our charity. So briefly, in 2022, we provided 2,500 specialist teaching and tuition interventions to both adults and children, 1,130 diagnostic assessments and screenings, and we had 5,500 calls to our free and confidential helpline. And I thank you for inviting me this evening. Have a good meeting.
Thank you very much, Kay. That's given us food for thought. And as I said earlier, you're free to stay for the rest of the meeting or free to go home. I think going home is the best option. Right, that leads us on to the agenda then. Any apologies for absence?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have apologies from Councillor Bailey, Councillor Bushman, Councillor Eddie Bean, Councillor Healy and Councillor John Stockwell.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest? No. Right, we move on to item 3 to approve as a correct record the minutes of the meeting of the council held on the 1st of December 2022. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, I'd like to move the recommendation to accept those minutes, Madam Mayor.
I'm happy to second those minutes as well, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? One abstention. Well, that's carried. Right, we now move to my announcements. Well, I think that moment of reflection was interesting. Understanding neurodiversity is very important in this world of instant communication, particularly for those who are responsible for public services. During my year so far, I've attended well over 100 engagements, and I've still got many more to go. It seems a long time since our last meeting. Last year, in fact, just before Christmas. Many civic and which was really a lovely service and a truly Christmassy way of entering the holiday period. It was a proper old-fashioned candlelit service, followed by a festive reception in Colston Bassett Village Hall. Thank you, every one of you who supported me. I also attended, again, a very traditional Christmas concert at Normanton-on-Soar, which was very enjoyable. I saw the incredible expertise of the Notts gymnastic teams in a pantomime-type Christmas display at their West Bridgeford home behind Rushcliffe School. I had a very early start one morning, 6:15, in order to meet and extend Christmas greetings to the depot and streetwise staff, followed by the staff here at the arena and Fountain Court members. I've only just learnt that the staff had a Christmas jumper day to raise money for my charities. So I'd like to thank them and extend my thanks to everybody else. I was serving lunch to the homeless at the Friary. It is quite an eye-opener. Talking to these people, we learned a little about the reasons for their being on the streets. Often they were very sad stories, but also those for which you think, there but for the grace of God go I. One gentleman had had a business, home and family, but made one bad business decision and his wife sadly turned to alcohol. He lost his business, home and family. Often there are people who cannot cope with the complexities of life. Some of them have been offered accommodation but cannot manage the responsibilities. Such sad stories. If I can just put a plea in for the Friary, they're always looking for volunteers, but also clothing, household equipment, sleeping bags and warm duvets. If you go to their website, you can see how you can help and make a little difference. I attended a Ukrainian Christmas party in Radcliffe-on-Trent and watched a pantomime-type Ukrainian play. They kindly gave me a Ukrainian good luck doll. My luck's obviously failed me because I've forgotten to bring it with me, called a Motamka. Hickling WI in my home village also made over 100 beautiful quilts and reading pillows, which I helped distribute to Ukrainian children who would be experiencing a very different Christmas. Excuse me. I hosted the Mayor's charity Christmas party and we were well entertained by Johnny Victory. I was so sorry that so many of you were struck down that week by the dreadful flu bug because you missed a really great fun evening. I've visited food banks, which are proving a lifeline for so many at present, and Ruddington Pantry, which is helping to reduce food waste by storing and giving produce away free to local residents. I absolutely abhor food waste and fully support this initiative. I also had a lovely visit to Notts Wildlife Trust, excuse me, down at Skylarks Reserve. Thank you. Thanks. And saw the environment and wildlife at its best. It was such a beautiful day. I'm a keen environmentalist, so we had quite a lot to talk about. And earlier this week, I cut the ribbon at the new Bingham Arena. Wow, what a wonderful complex this is. I was absolutely bowled over by the facilities, the gym, exercise rooms, swimming pool, and in particular, the fully equipped community hall and enterprise zone. I can't wait to attend a concert or school play there. It really is worth a visit, and I suggest you make time to go and have a look. Rushcliffe has succeeded in providing during very difficult times for the people of Bingham and Rushcliffe, especially when we hear other councils closing their facilities. So well done Bingham, well done Rushcliffe, and well done the staff here. I've seen so many interesting events and places and met people from all walks of life. It is quite an education being the mayor. And now for some charity notices. I feel a bit like liquor. My deputy chairman, Debbie Mason, has kindly arranged an Easter fashion show for me in aid of my charities on the 6th of April in Tollerton Village Hall. And I'm sure she'll be happy to talk to you about it. Plumtree Village Hall, sorry. Plumtree, not Tullen, Plumtree Village Hall. And I'm sure she'll be happy to talk to you about it after the meeting. I'm hosting a sporting Q&A with celebrities and sporting heroes from Forest, Notts County Cricket Club, Nottingham Rugby and the world of ice hockey at the Rugby Club in Lady Bay on the 18th of April, proving Rushcliffe has great sport to offer. And towards the end of my term of office, I think I've mentioned it before, on the 14th of May, I'm going to abseil down Kingsmill Viaduct in aid of the Grantham Canal Water Restoration Group and Air Ambulance, which I hope I won't be needing on the occasion. You can purchase tickets for these events through the Mayor's office, and I hope you will, or for the abseiling, you can go to my Just Giving page. So having said all that, I think we should now move on with the rest of our meeting. So having said my announcements, I go to the leaders' announcements.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Obviously, very full diary, and I'd just like to endorse your comments about Bingham Arena and the Enterprise Centre there, and how terrific achievement that is in getting that live. I'd just like to use my term on my announcements just to reflect on a few things. This is obviously our last full council meeting of this term, and I'd like to acknowledge and pay respects to those councillors who won't be returning in terms of retiring, and of course some unfortunately won't make it through the election. That's the nature of elections, of course. But I think it's very important that we recognise the huge commitment, the sacrifices that you've all made on all parts of the chamber. We've all, I think, share the same objectives, want the very best for our residents. Our politics may differ, but it's a great testament to you all. And I think on behalf of all the residents, I'd like to thank all those councillors for the huge amount of work that you've done for Rushcliffe and for everybody right across the borough. And on behalf of Rushcliffe and the Chief Executive, I'd like to invite all councillors who are sitting, who don't actually move forward after May, to come to the full council in the new term on the 25th of May. If you could put that in your diaries, that'll be the first full council there in the new term. At this point, I'd like to actually spare a little bit of special recognition for two councillors whose service is probably over a zillion years, longer than actually Gordon Moore's been alive. But that's probably been about 1920, but perhaps not. But no, in terms of the incredible work they've done with their communities, representing their residents, work on committees for a long, long time, and these two people are stepping down. So I'd like to, for all the chamber, to pay the respects to Councillor Adair and Councillor Jeffries there who are stepping down. I think a round of applause for all what they've done. Finally, Madam Mayor, this will be my last time. I'll be standing here as leader addressing this meeting. So if I could just really thank my group for nominating me all those years ago, for my cabinet, including Councillor Mason, who sat on the cabinet, very distinguished career, for all the opposition, for respect. As I said, our politics may be different, but we all have the same objectives, and I thank you all for the respect you've given to the post of leader. It means an awful lot to me. I'd also like to thank my wife, because without her, I wouldn't be here today. The huge work. As we know, we've all got partners and the sacrifice we make, so it's great. And the lady next, who provides the best cakes and the best trifles and kept me going at times, of Mrs. Moore, as she's sitting there. I'm glad she's there today. I'd like to say I only had one ambition when I stood here 6 years ago, and that was to leave the post better than I found it. In years to go, people would judge that. It's not for me, but I hope I'll be judged favourably in this. And finally, ladies and gentlemen, I'd just like to wish all the council the very best going forward in the new year. I'd like to wish new councillors, I know the number of here today, it's a real privilege to serve as a councillor, and I hope that those certainly who do achieve and get elected, you do it with great pride. And finally, I'd just like to wish the new leader the very, very best, and I really hope that they're as proud and privileged as I feel in leading this authority. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Next item is Chief Executive's announcements. Peter Linfield is deputising, and I believe there are no announcements.
There are no announcements, and I couldn't follow Simon's speech anyway. So.
Right, citizens' questions. I believe we have, I'm not sure, is the gentleman, Mr. Emrys Robinson Green? Oh, you are, right. So you will be putting your question. Thank you very much. You need, that's right. That's it, right.
Thank you, Mayor. So our question tonight is, will the council commit to take active and timely steps to investigate and implement how to end its policy of not adopting open spaces on new developments, leading to estate and service charges? Your policy currently has the ramifications that local residents must pay extortionate, unregulated and uncapped fees to private companies for the management of their estates, not just in maintaining the open space, but to get permission to, for example, sell or erect a shed in their garden. In Eastleigh, on the Lantern Fields development, where myself and some others are based, for example, that's £130 just to get permission to put a shed in our own garden. That is actually roughly equivalent to some of the smaller dwellings' whole monthly council tax fee for that estate as well. This money lines the pockets of private shareholders far away from Rushcliffe. More than half the fees paid on our estate in particular go on administrative and management costs, not the maintenance of open spaces or anything related to it. It is perfectly possible to use existing means such as the Section 106 requirements and to request, for example, 20 years of maintenance and management fees from the developers as a commuted sum, as used to happen before you changed the policy. Stratford-on-Avon District Council is one example of many who are currently out with public consultations and detailed plans achieving exactly this, reverting to how we previously were. The money, therefore, would stay within the local economy and supports the council to deliver its services. In the submitted question, I've given some links to the parliamentary briefing and the homeowners' rights campaign and such like that I'm sure the officers have seen. Happy to share those alternatively. And to sort of end on, actually, Councillor Clark here phrased these particular charges when it was raised at the Growth and Development Scrutiny meeting on the 16th of July in 2020. We'll recognise these as unforeseen circumstances. Now, of course, with communications from some of the officers and the councillors since then, absolutely nothing has been done to see these issues or find a way out of these unforeseen circumstances in what is over 2.5 years since that was raised. Thank you.
Thank you. If you like, that's it. Lovely. Thank you very much. I believe Councillor Upton is going to respond.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll prefix my formal response. Thank you, Mr. Robinson-Jones, for your question, firstly. I'll prefix my response by saying I have some understanding of the comments you've made, having lived in my previous property, which was subject to the issues, mainly the issues that you referred to. So I have some first-hand experience, good and bad. It's a national problem in a largely unregulated sector, and it's been a challenge that we know of, and that we've reviewed it, as you say, at a couple of growth boards and development scrutiny groups in July 2020 and again in January 2021. So it's an issue that we are aware of and we have reviewed. But it's a national problem, and as I say, in a largely unregulated sector. And it's been rumoured, and I stress rumoured, that the new Regeneration and Levelling Up Bill may include a code for the management of these public open spaces by management companies, but we haven't got the details as yet. In recognition of the ongoing concerns and issues that you highlighted, this council will make a commitment again to undertake a further review of the issues I highlighted, including reviewing what other councils do, because I noticed you mentioned Stratford-on-Avon District Council, I believe. The council will undertake a comprehensive review looking at the various management options and bring it before the Growth and Development Scrutiny Group, which is a cross-party group, later this year. Now this issue is also the subject of Councillor Thomas's motion in agenda item 13, which I'll respond to and probably in more detail when that debate happens later this evening. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Upton. Item 8, is petitions. I don't believe we have received any petitions. I've been asked as chairman of this meeting to consider extending the time for proposing the 2023-24 budget and financial strategy as set out in the papers to 15 minutes and to allow 7.5 minutes for group leaders responding. I'm happy to approve that request. So we move to item 9, budget and financial strategy. Councillor Robinson to move.
Thank you. Hopefully I won't be using up the 15 minutes. I just want to start first of all looking at the budget. I actually want people to look at this budget through the 120,000 residents of Rushcliffe, because this is a budget that has been very carefully crafted to represent the diversity of our Rushcliffe residents and our business, regardless of age, regardless of creed, colour, all our communities and all our businesses. But it's also a budget that has also been created with significant headwinds, such as obviously the war in Europe, the biggest war since World War II in the Ukraine, the raging inflation that has come from this, worldwide economic downturn, and of course what it has meant to prices like of energy that affects us all. But let's remember, ladies and gentlemen, this is not a budget done in isolation. This is a budget that is built on the real success over many, many years of very, very prudent control of this authority. I'd like to just drill down to give a reflection and representation of how this budget fits within our communities. And first of all, starting with businesses, that we are proposing that we are going to freeze car parking charges. Very important at high streets. They're under a lot of pressure at the moment. We've got some of the cheapest car parking anywhere in the county, but we've made that decision within this budget to freeze them, to just give that little bit of support and help footfall on the high street. We're investing in the Development Corporation. I sit on the Development Corporation board. It's cross-party, cross-region umbrella, and that is going to be bringing the new jobs, new businesses, green technologies to the area. And the Cabinet, in fact, we shared earlier this week some very, very significant plans that we're hoping to make in public very soon. We're also investing in that western corner of Rushcliffe through the Freeport. A lot of resources and time going into that. Significant announcements are due within the next 7 days. And also, of course, with HS2, the Parkway, again, coming into Rushcliffe, the major hub for the East Midlands. We're also obviously supporting the government on significant business rate relief, which is really helping our high street and our businesses at the moment under these very, very difficult times. And also remember, Madam Mayor, that within this budget, we have a significant properties generating rents. But we're also very, very supportive of our businesses. Madam Mayor was talking about the ones at Bingham, where we're giving rent-free periods. We're giving 6-month rents, reviews as well, in terms of they can break the rents there, which reflects the needs of businesses. And that's very important, as I said, going forward. And indeed, within that enterprise zone, that's only been on the market for a short time. 10 out of 12 have been let already, which just shows you how good we are in making sure that we fulfill that market. With regards to the vulnerable and disadvantaged across our society in Rushcliffe, we're investing £3.7 million in disabled facilities across the borough. We're also investing £325,000 at Hound Road, the hostel there, which many of you know is a refuge for some very, very challenging families who've been on the end of domestic violence and things like that. We're allocating £4.7 million for social housing. Again, with the large sites, we always try to go up to 30% of those houses should be affordable on the social housing. And certainly these funds are significant. And that is why we deliver more social housing than any other district in Nottinghamshire. We've also, a little bit controversial, you'll see in the budget, we've allocated £1 million to build towards a Egyptian traveller site. We bit the bullet. We know it's controversial. We know it's difficult. But it also helps us to prevent unauthorised encampments around the borough, which you know affects communities. As regards our communities, you'll see within the budget that we're investing £2.7 million in our leisure centres, making sure that Rushcliffe is the place for leisure and for sport. They're going into Cotgrave and into Keyworth. Of course, building on the great success of the arena you're in now at the moment, and of course Bingham, as the Mayor referred to earlier. We're going to be building a new community hall in Ed Walton, again reflecting the growth of the population there. As well as we are going to be implementing a premium for empty properties. We now have these blight communities, and you'll see that at the moment it's 2 years. We're going to bring that back to 1 year. And once they're empty after 1 year, they receive a significant premium on their council tax. We're going to be investing over £2 million in new waste vehicles to make sure that Rushcliffe remains absolutely number one for recycling anywhere in the county. Again, providing the very best recycling services anywhere. We're going to be investing £1.1 million in a new website. Again, if you think the way that people communicate with the borough, it's mainly through the website and obviously with IT as well. And obviously the huge boost this will give for councillors and also for staff as well, and making sure that we are at the forefront of technologies. We're also putting £4 million aside for to do a CPO in Flintham. You know, this has been a troublesome site for many years. We've tried to use many measures, but again, that this is blighted communities, and that is why we want to put £4 million to compulsory purchase that site, and then get a sale back to back, and making sure that we'll then get the revenues back on it. But again, it's a bold move, but it's one that we think is necessary. So overall, members, there we are allocating £23.5 million to our capital budget. This is still, though, allowing us to put £10 million into our reserves over the 5 years. In terms of our income, that again, we benefit from many previous years of investment in our commercial estates, generating now nearly £2 million in rents and yields, also providing great job opportunities locally, as we talk again about Bingham. But they've also been managed very carefully, and we've seen so many councils across the country who really went over the edge during the pandemic because their investments were so high risk and so poorly managed. I'm very proud and very delighted that Rushcliffe managed to keep our heads above water and make sure that the rents and the incomes continued. As regards our fees and our incomes, you check that, there's a great balance across all of them, being it the parking and obviously the green bins. And again, this brings the resilience in the income coming actually into the borough. So now the council is mostly self-sufficient now. We don't get the grants, but it's a real testament over the years for our transformation projects that we've run to make sure that we've been the most efficient and most effective, and that we can deliver a budget like we are proposing today. In terms of our costs, obviously you'll see in the budget there that we are anticipating quite a substantial rise in our costs of people, offering our pay rises and making sure that our commitment to the national living wage. Obviously energy costs are reflected in there in terms of diesel, petrol, and obviously running costs as well. And of course, many inflationary pressures right across our cost base there. We have made calls on a couple of items where we feel that the taxpayer should be having better value for money. So we've actually cut the councillor grants every year, year on year. They're not spent. So we think it is prudent now that we propose that they're halved. They're still there and they're still to be used. But again, reflecting on many years where they just don't get spent. And we also felt the Young project now was not giving value for money for this council and for our taxpayers. So you'll see that we actually made a reduction there as well. As I said earlier, this is a budget for all. And the best example of this, and I'm absolutely delighted, is the way we are managing the council tax. So a lot of discussion, but we are proposing to freeze the council tax, the effective council tax, that the Rushcliffe element of this, and we're doing it through the bands A to D will see no increase at all. And that is using our own money as well as government grants as well. And then the bands E to H will only see on average 9p a week increase. So this is ensuring again that Rushcliffe has the lowest council tax of any council in the whole of Nottinghamshire once again, while still leading the way in services. what an incredible testament this is to the administration of this council. But also, just gets better than that, that we are going to remain debt-free. Again, one of the only councils, not only in Nottinghamshire, but in the country, that actually has no debt. So within this budget, you will see that we do not have to finance any debt, and all our monies can be focused on providing frontline services rather than having to finance debt. So, Madam Chairman, there are three words that sum up this budget. I think ambitious, balanced and inclusive. Ambitious, because we're still having built things like the Bingham, the crematorium, over £30 million of investment over the couple of years that are being delivered right now. We're still looking at, despite the economic headwinds, of over £23 million going into our capital budget. We're looking at supporting thousands and thousands of jobs in that Western Corridor, the A453 through Freeport, through the Development Corporation, through HS2. This is ambition. This is about creating jobs and prosperity to this borough. It's balanced because our reserves will actually increase to 10 million to make sure that we have reserves in there in case there are more issues as we go forward that we can't control, such as we had with the pandemic. You'll see in there that we are proposing not to incur any more debt. We're freezing garden waste charges for this year, car parking, as I've mentioned. And yet we will only have a very, very small deficit over the 5 years, which is easily covered and easily fundable. It's inclusive. I mentioned about the council tax, the way we are doing it by focusing on the bands A to D. We've done that because that actually focuses it on the people who need it most, also creates the least administration and is less subjective. The investment in social housing, disabled facilities, the investment in Hound Road and our leisure services I've covered. That will help all the young people generating all the income that we need in terms of our returns from these leisure centres, but also providing the very best facilities that we can. I'd like to thank Peter Linfield and his team because this has been an incredibly difficult budget. I mentioned at the start the headwinds against us, and we looked at many options in where to take this forward. But also I'd like to thank members who've attended the workshops as well and fed their ideas to making sure that is cross-party and that we do collaborate. I also want to remind members that this has been through the corporate governance group and it's also been through cabinet as well. Finally, Madam Mayor, no leader will be standing up in this county delivering a budget like this with the ambition, the balance and inclusivity. You'll see in there, we're not talking redundancies. We're not talking about closing. We're talking about ambition. We're talking about being very, very proud to be in Rushcliffe, that we can have a budget that supports what our residents deserve. So I am very proud to commend this budget to the Chamber tonight by moving the recommendations of page 9, item 2, A to I. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
15 minutes.
12.
12:56.
Councillor Moore.
Yes, I'm happy to second the recommendation. I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think you should all prepare yourself for a change of tone from that last speech. The past 4 years have taught us that local councils can be straitjacketed in the things that they do to balance a budget. The options available to councils to make real significant impact for real people in our communities due to budget constraints and ideas are already set, they're predetermined, and there's very little we can do to change those things. Rushcliffe is a great place to live. We're really lucky. And the council has balanced this budget in part to us farming out or selling much of what other councils have kept in-house. Without the budget blasting expenses such as adult social care, we are weathering the storms of austerity and crises. As well as the good budgeting that has taken place at this borough, we have been able to balance our budget due to the great expanses of Greenbelt that have been put up for developers when the coalition government changed the rules in 2010. This influx of housing we've had to bear witness to these past 10 years, and which we've heard about tonight, has brought this council funds in the forms of new homes bonus, whilst increasing our tax base year on year, and we need to acknowledge this. The truth is, if a borough like Rushcliffe can't balance its budget, no one can. For years now, we've been told that this is due to prudence, which is in part a fair assessment. But really, it's also down to good fortune. We've been fortunate to have an affluent borough, fortunate to have available areas of land to sell to build large housing estates on. We're fortunate that we have a small number of services to fund. But we should not be complacent that this will continue, and we need to bury this self-congratulatory attitude. Unless we begin to view our circumstances with an honest attitude of gratefulness and humility, then we fall victim to the fates that many others have befallen, we've seen with other councils. And once again, our balance books and the way we balance it will all but dry up. I do need to make a point about the council tax freeze. It isn't a freeze, but rather it's a hidden rise. And next year, it'll be double, because this hidden rise is happening and being funded, as we've said, by the government and by this borough. So the Labour group is going to abstain on this budget, because what we do bears little impact on tonight's outcome. But I particularly would like to thank Sarah and Peter, as they patiently guided me through this budget. And yeah, that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Walker. Councillor Jones?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We appreciate the work of officers in managing residents' money and government grants and the expenditure. And I agree in general that the capital programme is balanced in terms of the fairness that you described. But we need to remember, whilst the majority group often brag that we're the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire relative to others, a fact that's trumpeted without qualification or explanation of the 4 reasons that keep it low and keep our income high. The council saves expenditure, as we know, by not tending the common areas on new estates, whose residents are obliged to pay extra tax to the management company. This was a policy choice rather than raise tax and maintenance by streetwise. More people pay council tax with the significant expansion of housing, providing the council with an annual increase in income of 2% each year, next year and before and after. Rushcliffe has so many more properties at a higher rateable value than other councils in Nottinghamshire. So an apparently low level of charge gives a much higher income. And it behoves this council to recognise that we are living in a wealthy area in terms of that council tax take. Further, none of the other Notts councils have so many town and parish councils as Rushcliffe. Other borough councils provide all or most of their services. Here, borough expenditure is reduced by dispersing costs to parish and town councils, and of course to West Bridgford, which has no town council. But turning to other matters in the report, we certainly support the halving of the period for applying the empty homes premium. There are too many homes in the borough left empty for too long. The use of government money and the 30,000 from the council leads to the no payment increase this year for bands A to D. Well, this is very nice and popular now. It won't be so popular when there will be a double whammy increase the following year. We appreciate the uncertainty of the economic climate aggravated by a volatile Conservative government. The provision for the increased cost of fuel and utilities and for wage rises is necessary. The principles of the general fund balance are clear and safe. We are pleased that there is no external borrowing. The predicted fall in total reserves is not good. Fortunately, the risks to new homes bonus and business rates are for the future. To improve the budget, we have long supported a reduction in the maximum councillor community grant to 500 and to make the charges for each extra green bin the same as the first. Regarding West Bridgford, the report mentions the special expenses panel were told what the charges would be. It was not given a choice of outcomes. Liberal Democrats opposed last year's offloading of the costs from Rushcliffe-wide events, Taste of Rushcliffe and Lark in the Park, from the council's budget onto the West Bridgford special expenses. We are not satisfied with that. People of West Bridgford know that the council has received 15 million from the land at Sharp Hill and another 5 million to come. We have £500,000 for a much needed community hall on the Sharp Hill Country Park, but the rest of that money has gone into the general coffers and not into local facilities in West Bridgford. In the capital building programme, we highlight the fact that the 4.7 million for social housing is less than the over 5 million allocated for social housing last year. We would ask for early information about how this is translated into dwellings, and that implementation of that is a priority given the levels of need and the increase in rent for social housing. On the Gypsy and Traveller site, we totally agree. We think it's critical that the council acts quickly to forestall these random applications, and we fully support any measure that the council does to get on with that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallinger. Can you switch off, Councillor Jones?
Now I've got both lights on here, haven't I?
That's right.
Right, it's okay. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, there's an awful lot of work goes into the budget as every year. Thank you to the officers for the tremendous amount of work that goes into that. Also, thank you for the opportunity for all councillors to participate in the budget workshops as well, and to have a look at the training on that. It is extremely useful. I'm saying this as chair of the member development panel. It's extremely useful for all councillors to have an understanding and a grounding in the very, very complex financial matters that we are all dealing with. And that's regardless of whether it's a governing group or an opposition group. It's extremely useful that we make use of that. And indeed, for existing councillors, returning councillors, possibly some new councillors, we don't know, there'll be a lot of training to undertake in the first month or two of the next council term. So block out some space in your diaries. In terms of the actual budget that we've got before us here, there is a lot to be commended in it. Particularly happy with the opportunities for decarbonisation that are highlighted throughout a number of the projects there. Very pleased to see that the 810,000 budget line for climate change action is still there. I'm rather bemused by the zero expenditure against that seems to be forecast. I'm not quite sure why that is when we're actually supposed to be spending the money to actually make the changes that we need to decarbonise our own processes as we move towards being net zero as a council by 2030. Perhaps that could be responded to by the ruling group in their reply to this. I do acknowledge that some of that has been used and then sort of refilled for some of the projects that have gone forward there. Some things, obviously, as Greens, that we are not particularly happy with. The car park charges was highlighted there. Completely understand your reasoning, but disagree with it. What we need to be doing is working with other local authorities, with the county, on improving the public transport across the borough, such that people are not forced into using their cars for every single journey and every trip that they need to make. We need to make those opportunities, and we need to make those changes for all the people of our borough. The empty homes premium, I think that's an excellent move. I have personal experience of difficulties with empty houses in our ward and in my personal life as well. That's something that we definitely need to look at. Very, very pleased to see that. Also very, very pleased to see the bit about the council not knowingly investing in businesses whose activities, and I'm quoting here, pose a risk to serious harm, including human rights abuse, environmental harmful activities, socially harmful activities. That's great. I think it's great that we don't make those investments directly. However, with some of the organisations that we do invest through are not so clear on that and are decidedly opaque about where some of those investments end up. I think that's something that we really need to look at. and make sure that it's not just us who are not making sure that we don't invest in fossil fuels and so on, but also the people who are doing those investments on our behalf. It's not enough just to sort of take one step away and say, well, our hands are clean. With all that, we shall be considering the debate and the flow of that, and we may well be abstaining on this particular item. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Once again, I see that we've gone into overdrive in terms of bragging about how cheap we are, this time starting before the budget was even approved by Cabinet. So much for democracy in this rubber stamping council dominated by one party. Councillor Jones has once again explained how these league tables are calculated. Our demographics, housing mix and general affluence as a borough influence our ranking. Again, we see this statement in the report. The overriding Rushcliffe principle is that the council aims to stay in the lower quartile for council tax. Really, being cheap is still overriding everything else? However, I remain in awe of the complexity of the budgeting process and the skill of our officers in navigating it when there are so many external uncertainties that can easily throw everything off course. I note that no external borrowing is expected to be necessary in the medium term. We support the proposals for use of the Council Tax Support Fund plus additional council provision to ensure that bands A to D receive no increase in the Rushcliffe portion of their council tax bill. We hope that this principle will be replicated in future years when there is no election. Noting the county council, police and fire increases, it'll sadly be a drop in the ocean anyway, though, compared to the overall increases in people's bills. With respect to recommendation F concerning the use of the empty homes premium, I'm pleased to see that a scrutiny item is now scheduled to look in more detail at the impacts of using differential council tax rates to incentivise getting housing into use, and that this will cover all types of empty homes, including furnished homes that are only occupied periodically. I note the availability of 4.5 million to provide support to registered housing providers, and that options for spending this are to be assessed. The money is there, but this seems to be yet another pot where we hold money that is difficult to spend. In this case, on housing for those most in need. And I would ask, please, if this is coming to scrutiny, to get some urgency behind the development of those plans for actually spending this money rather than sitting on it. One further comment in Councillor Robinson's speech that I'd like to come back on really, and that's about spending on vehicles to make us the best council for recycling. There are many gaps in our recycling provision that we should be looking at ways to implement, for instance, food waste recycling. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you very much, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Moore, did you reserve your right to speak? Did you reserve your right to speak?
Yes, I reserve the right to speak. Yeah. You want to speak?
Unless there's anybody else who... Oh,
Yes, sorry, hang on.
Councillor Butler.
Yeah, thank you, Madam. Well, I'm surprised more people aren't indicated to speak, actually. It's a very important meeting tonight. You've got an agenda that's 200 pages long, 150 pages of which are the budget, which is the most important item of the year. And I personally welcome this budget. I think it's good news. I'm sorry to hear we had a glass half empty suggestion from Councillor Walker in particular, which is to, I understand that, so that you've got to find something to oppose us on. I just need to correct you on one small thing. You made reference to the burden of things like adult social care. Well, we don't have that. That's not this council. Well, you did say that. We don't do that at this council, nor do any of the other district and borough councils. And the point that's been made is for your district and borough council services, we are still the lowest council tax in Nottinghamshire. But anyway, that's by the by. And for colleagues who are thinking of abstaining on this, well, I may be wrong on the way I word this, but have a legal duty to set a budget. So if you're abstaining, you're in effect sort of saying, well, we don't like the budget, we're not going to set one. So good thing you're not having to run a budget, isn't it? Because you wouldn't be able to make a mind up about it, I suspect. But there again, I'm being slightly tongue-in-cheek, and you understand that. But anyway, with regards to our budget, I obviously welcome it. We know that only too well, as the opposition have said, we all know that the world and the country is still in a very challenging place. Local authorities in particular have huge amounts of challenges to deal with, and at the same time delivering the services for our residents. And we must be doing something right in Rushcliffe, because people seem to like being here. And also, I do wonder as well, I actually have a lot of sympathy about the earlier item about the charges for new estates and such like, and I agree that needs to be looked at. But I have to say, if I was one of the new residents of those estates, I think Councillor Walker referred to bombarding Rushcliffe of housing estates. If I was a proud owner of one of those new houses, I might feel a little bit unwelcome at that. Oh, they don't want me, Rushcliff. Because that's how it will come over.
Walker.
No, well, I thought you said something in a negative way. You were referring to new housing estates. But that's by the by. Anyway, on a positive note, let's welcome what we're doing here in these challenging times. Have a look, if you haven't already done so, and I know you will have done, at the pages relating to the capital investment. It's amazing. Here we are. We've got no debt, and we're spending. What are we doing? I've written them down here. £1 million. And I'm being slightly parochial here, £1 million on improving the Copgrave Leisure Centre, spending 500,000 plus on the Keyworth Leisure Centre. We're improving playgrounds and play parks in West Bridgeford, the West Park Pavilion, and there's more. And we're doing all this, and we're freezing the council tax for bands A to D, who surely that must be some help. I realise, and I hear what you say, that it's not a huge amount of money, but surely, as I say, every penny counts, every penny helps. And I also wonder as well at the reference to what might be happening next year, because someone's obviously got a crystal ball, and we'll have to see what happens, because no one quite knows for sure what happens in a year's time. So really, Madam Mayor, I say well done to all involved, and I do include all members across the parties on this, because as Councillor I'm not sure who said it, but he said we're all part of the cross-party working group. It was Councillor Mallender, I think, but of the cross-party working group, which works. And it shows that when we sit down and have sensible conversations, we can actually do some good. And I think partly as a result of that, the work of the financial experts, the officers, and also councillors across the board, we've got a pretty good budget in what is still, as I say, a very challenging time. And I know we've got to have the ding dong about it, but I think I really would encourage colleagues who are still not sure, support it, because this is good for Rushcliffe and crucially it's good for our residents. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Butler. Can I just make it clear that the extension on time was for leaders and group leaders, so all other speakers get 5 minutes? And can I also say, please do not argue with councillors across the chamber. Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Mayor. I can agree with Councillor Walker on one thing. She actually agrees. Rushcliffe is a great place to live. Well done. Brilliant. And it will continue to be a great place to live so long as we are managing things here. We are not just debt-free, but we have one of the most enviable financial status in the whole country. There are many councils that will envy and do envy and are jealous of the financial management that we possess in this council. So, straitjacket was referred to, and then the green belt issues, and new homes bonus, and the fact that we were only able to have this extra money because they were building extra houses. But it still takes more money to service those houses. You have to buy more refuse vehicles, you have to buy more equipment. So the costs increase to service those homes. But let's not forget, Madam Mayor, those extra houses, what did Rushcliffe do? They were helping the city council out of a jam. We took on an extra 9,000 houses to help the city council with all their problems. Oh, I nearly forgot, Madam Mayor, the city council. Oh, yes. Now,
why do we have to talk about the city council in our budget? It doesn't make any sense that is continually brought up, and it doesn't matter for our budget.
It's only
No
to-
bearing whatsoever on it.
Thank you, Councillor Walker. Would you like to continue, Councillor Clark?
thank you, Madam Mayor. I didn't bring up the subject of the green belt and the new houses. Councillor Walker brought up the subject of the green belt and the new houses. So I'm explaining why that situation exists. Just as we are not wasting money on the likes of Robin Hood Energy, like the City Council is. We're not wasting money on high costs of the tram. We're not wasting money on a failed Broadmarsh project. We're not wasting money on Nottingham Castle, failed project. So,
What does this thing, Nottingham City budget, and what they've done this have to do with our budget? I don't understand it. Going off on a tangent.
Councillor
I will
Clark,
explain, Madam Mayor, if you just
would
wait.
you please explain where it fits into our budget?
So, other councils here are wasting money and squandering money. However, this council does not do that, Madam Mayor. This council, as I've said, has the most enviable financial status in the country. And as we were accused, this is not being cheap at all. This is about value for money. We are providing the value for money. We are providing that good financial management. That's not being cheap. You can always spend more, but we are making sure that we are spending the money correctly. Food waste was mentioned, and that's on the cards because the Environment Bill is going through its course, and food waste will be something that needs to be addressed in the future. So, Councillor Robinson said that he was proud. We are proud. All of us should be proud. And we've done the opposition parties a great favour, Madam Mayor, because we have laid yet another great budget to keep this council A, debt-free, and B, a great place to live, as admitted by Councillor Walker. So we've done all the opposition a great favour because you can be proud of this council as well as us being proud of this council. So just be proud and vote for this budget.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Gaunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm not going to rant or say anything, actually. I was just going to ask if, I do like to rant sometimes, sorry, but I was just going to ask if we could stop this stuff. This is not a debate at the moment. We're not debating anything. We're just talking and shouting and saying weird things. We don't need to do that. We've already pretty much made our decisions, and you guys have as well. We've seen this before. I know that the councilman was saying he'd like to see the progress of the debate
Are
and
you
find out.
addressing the budget?
Yes, I'd like us to, personally, like us to move on to just voting on this, please, if we can. And whoever's ever able to
There
do
are
that.
others who wish
put the
to
motion
speak.
forward.
So thank you,
Thank you,
Councillor
because
Gaunt.
it's just wasting everyone's time.
Councillor Barney.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. I don't know how everybody else in the room was brought up, but my parents brought me up to believe that sneering was equally as unpleasant as bragging. And I don't think there's a place for either in this chamber. And I think it's a great shame that on both sides, those suggestions may have been made. But adult social care has been mentioned on a couple of occasions in the chamber this evening. And I just felt it was my duty to stand up as the portfolio holder, the cabinet member at Notts County Council for adult social care, just to relay to this chamber the nights of sleeplessness that I had going into that budget, £260 million budget, so enormous, but taking care of the most vulnerable and needy people across our great county here in Nottinghamshire. And I was terrified that at Notts County Council, we were going to be in the position where we had to slash and burn. And my job was to decide what bottom line, whose services, whose parents, whose disabled relatives were not going to get the care they need. And I can assure every member in this room, regardless of colour, you lose sleep when you're in that position. It's uncomfortable. It's unpleasant. It cuts you to the very core of your humanity and your decency. And my colleagues of different political persuasions in that same portfolio role across the country have had to make those decisions. They've made them this year. They've sweat blood and tears in making them. So I call us to stand together, put our political persuasions aside. Let's not brag, but let's not sneer. Let's celebrate that this council has a balanced budget, which puts us in a good place so we do not have to make those terrifying, threatening cuts to our frontline public services.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Councillor Sue Malander.
Of our group, so therefore I could have 7.5 minutes, I suppose, but he didn't have anything like that, and neither will I. I just want to ask a couple of questions, please, because perhaps the answer is in there, but I can't find it. The new waste vehicles in which we are investing, will there be on those capacity to collect food waste? And as a lot of our residents have been asking, but I'm asking something extra than this, separated glass, because that's what they want. They want doorstep glass, but I do keep explaining to people that if you have doorstep glass which is mixed, it's not properly recycled into glass bottles and jars. Vehicles, which many years ago, I've been a councillor a long time, we did actually have a proposal to actually do that with another council, but due to an election, that all fell through. But yes, is there? So I'd like to know what kind of new waste vehicles, as well as their energy consumption, also what kind of waste they're going to be collecting. And oh dear, I'm going to be bad now that I'm going to in a different way. The playgrounds, could I also have assurance that the playground refurbishment that's going on in West Bridgford and any other places will include inclusive play objects and play? This is because in Bridgford Park, the other day when we were working with the West Bridgford Park people to Friends of the Park on the Willow Tunnel, a man came up to us and said that he took his disabled daughter into the city, into the meadows, in fact, because the play equipment for disabled children was much better than any in Rushcliffe, apart from Rushcliffe Country Park, which is a bit too far for him to go to. So I just asked those two questions. Could we ensure, please, that we are going to have inclusive equipment on the playgrounds, and what kinds of waste is going to be collected on these new vehicles? And the other thing I wanted to say was that I would like to commend the somewhat belated but at last inclusion of a gypsy and traveller site, and that we carrying on with the 30% affordable housing. Those two things are to be commended. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Malander. Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. I hadn't planned to speak tonight, but I feel I have to now. Thank you, Councillor Clark. You encouraged me to. So just to start on the issue Councillor Clark brought up, which I thought I really have to refer to, the tram. Have you ever got the tram, Councillor Clark? At 6 o'clock when it's completely jam-packed, or at 9 o'clock in the morning when you can't move? I think it's a real relief to everybody who drives in Nottingham that the tram exists to take people off the roads. Food waste, yeah, it'd be great if we collected food waste. I noticed the city have started doing that this week, or trialling it. Such a shame that, you know, we haven't managed to do it in Rushcliffe. As we've talked about, we're not spending money supporting public spaces. We're not owning our own council housing. I know it's been a big, obviously, issue in Rushcliffe that we don't do that. I'm sure you're all aware of the issues. As has been said, we're very, very fortunate. We're a very lucky place, and part of the benefits of that means we are collecting a large council tax base, and this allows us to be in such a positive position. We participated positively in the budget meetings. We've given ideas. We're very to do that. This is your budget. You have the size of group to get it through. You don't need our votes. We're abstaining. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gowland. Councillor Sims.
Thank you. Colleagues in the room, everybody, I'm sure know I don't mince my words and I don't sit on a fence, to my own party's detriment sometimes, that I'll speak against what's been decided. I listened to the debate I was quite perplexed, if I'm perfectly honest, because I wonder sometimes what planet people live on. This budget is fantastic, really is. This council is run in a very, very prudent way. 20 years of local government service I gave, years after years of reviews to cut, even in the Blair years, cut. And as a senior officer with a large budget, who am I going to? I can't cut any more pencils and stationery. What people's lives have I played with and made redundant? To the point I had enough of local government, and I got out. I got tired of playing with people's lives, my staff's lives. This council is not asking department heads to have reviews. This council is not asking department heads to cut their budget and cut their people. This council has balanced a fantastic budget, and I really do think you should think about what you're doing. Think about abstaining on a budget that's sensible, is low cost to our residents. I have to pay another 9 pence a week. Big deal to me. But to the people that can't afford that, we have put forward proposals to reduce reduce the impact on their lives. And their lives, people are struggling at the moment, paying their bills. So to abstain, I think, is immoral, and you really should think about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sims. Councillor Inglis. Councillor Walker.
Okay, yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. Just 2 points I want to raise, really. The first one is the capital investment that we're getting at Keills Leisure Centre. Now, that was built in 1976, and I had the pleasure of working there from 1977 as a pool attendant wandering around before I went on to be the assistant manager. Now, that leisure centre was always under threat of being closed down for the usage and everything. Yeah, a couple of years ago, we lost the dry side to the school academy, but now to get that 500k investment into Keyworth is absolutely fantastic. You know, it shows that commitment to the leisure, and the residents have all come back and they're really pleased with what's going forward on that. So the second thing I wanted to pick up on Councillor Malinder of what she said about the refuse trucks and everything. Yes, we have just replaced 3 refuse trucks. That was part of the capital budget from the previous budget. Okay. We can't invest in the other vehicles at the moment. The electrical, they are not compatible at the moment. They haven't got the range, they haven't got the capacity. So that is something to look forward to. We're still pushing forward to the 2030 carbon neutral. You ask about the containers, glass collection, that is still going ahead. Yes, the environmental bill is acting really slowly. Everyone is frustrated about it, but we do sit on that committee meeting. All of Nottinghamshire have come together collaboratively. All the authorities are looking together. We're ahead of the game. They're looking at what the vehicles will be, they're looking at what the containers will be. When that decision comes and we can hit the ground running. At the moment, it's all unknown. We don't want to invest in something that's not going to be practical or compliant. So we've just got to tread water at the moment. And when that decision is made, we will hit the ground running. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Inglis. Councillor Bunsen.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a couple of points. Just wanted to again say thank you to Peter and the staff for pulling this together. It is a task. I know a lot of folks have been involved in this, and it's not easy. Just a couple of things. Councillor Clark, you said spending money wisely, correct? 1 million on a website was mentioned. Wow. Mind you, that doesn't surprise me. 37 billion was wasted on test and trace by the Conservative government. So I do honestly think there is improvements that could be made. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bansal. Any more discussion? No. Councillor Moore, you reserved your right to speak.
I have. I'd actually written a speech, but I've just ripped it up. So, by popular demand, I'm going to stick to the budget and some of the questions that you all asked. A couple of words in here really upset me. One particularly, bragging. I don't like that word. I don't brag. Those of you who know me, you've known me a long time. I'm proud. I'm proud of what we've done, proud of what we've achieved. And that's not just us over here, that's everybody. I'm proud of what you achieved. Because
no one said brag.
Councillor Thomas did.
Yes, you did, yeah.
Thank you,
Councillor Thomas accused me of bragging. Councillor Thomas accused us of bragging. And I'm extremely disappointed in that kind of comment, because we don't brag, we are proud of what we've done, where we are and what we're achieving. Another one that's upset me, this is one of yours. Good fortune. Good fortune. When you get it off the fortune cookies, you generate good fortune, you work for good fortune, you make your own fortune. It isn't just good fortune. The other one that's upset me as well is a hidden rise. Okay, I see your logic. Next year you're saying it, but you don't know. Peter and his team haven't helped us. Nobody, whoever's running this council, hasn't set the budget for next year. This year, we've tried to help people through a cost of living crisis. We have kept down well, you know, I'm not going to repeat it. You've heard it all. Special expenses, that was raised in West Bridgford. Yeah, all the food fairs in West Bridgford, wonderful, all these things. But do you expect an old lady who lives in a village in Westleek or in Hickling or in Cropple Butler or in Tithby to pay for it? No. If you have it now, you pay for it in West Bridgford or you don't have it. It's unfair for the small villagers out. As I've said, Westleek, I don't know, all over the place, name the villages, they shouldn't be paying for those food fairs. The budget workshops, we don't have to do it. As the majority party here, we could quite clearly set a budget, come here, make you have it and vote it down, vote it in. But we don't. We want you to be inclusive. That's why I'm really, really disappointed you're going to sit on your hands on the last full council of term and abstain on a sensible budget. You've said you're going to abstain. It's disgraceful that you are going to abstain on this budget, which we have to set by law. Okay, nearly there. By law. And it's just a disgrace that you're going to abstain. Climate change, value for money, and the other word you've got here is cheap. Somebody called me cheap. I'm not cheap. I believe in value for money. You don't buy the cheapest shoes, you don't buy the cheapest shirts. We believe here in value for money. The word cheap should not be used. Now, disabilities, spending disability money. I would love to bring you to a place in my village where we're just spending a huge six-figure sum on an affordable home, which is being converted for a young mother who's totally disabled in a wheelchair and converted for her. I'm incredibly proud of that. That money is being spent. You perhaps don't see it. And also on climate change, yes, the figures in the budget don't really say too much, but we've been very fortunate. We've had 1.2 million from external funds that we're using on the leisure centres. We've had all this money over at Eastleek, which we're using for insulated houses. And that's why we can do it. And yes, well, I probably won't be in this seat next time, but I hope whoever's in this seat will keep the climate change budget and we'll keep it topped up if they have to. So, you know, I'm really happy to second this budget. I hear what you say. I just think it's very, very sad. I don't brag. I'm not cheap. And I don't believe in good fortune. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson, you have a right to reply.
Yeah, thank you. And obviously, it's been quite a debate, this, hasn't it? So I don't really want to add too much to this. Just a few factual things. You mentioned about wasting money on 1.1 million. You didn't, obviously weren't listening. I actually said the website and IT. The website's only 80,000, so you do stand corrected on that. Just other things, Councillor Moore said, using this word, good fortune, humility. Am I supposed to stand here and apologise that this is one of the best run councils in the country, that we're actually freezing council tax? I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry for our prosperity. I'm so sorry, our council base, because people want to live here. I'm so sorry. Yeah, of everything that we are doing, we should go to our residents and say, do you know what, we're freezing your council tax. I'm so sorry. The lovely houses that we're building everywhere, I'm really sorry. The leisure centres, all the facilities, all the capital expenditure. We're even building a new crematorium. I'm so proud of that. What an incredible facility. We're one of the best in the country. Maybe I ought to go and apologise for that as well. Well, that's when I'm leader. But I do find it so disappointing about aspiration. Not one of you mentioned in your replies about jobs, about creation, recognising tens of thousands of new jobs that are going to be created in this borough. Because the reason why it's chosen, because of our communications of what we are. The Development Corporation, the Freeport, why HS2 is coming. Not one of you mentioned about jobs. It was all about running too many houses. Why the council tax is like this? Well, the council tax be even better, because more jobs, more houses, more people, wealth, creation. What does this country need more than anything? It's prosperity. It's growth. That's the biggest thing that will pick this country up from where it is. And yet you lot is talking about, oh, yeah, should feel apologise for this. Oh, you're cheap. I'm sorry. This is the best borough. I was at a conference last week where other districts, because let's forget the unitaries because of everything else that they do. And they said to me at that time, I really wish we could be in your position. Look at those districts at the moment around Nottinghamshire with their debts, the council taxes going up. We talked about the housing, about why we actually don't do the social housing ourselves. Again, it comes back to a really key word. It's called decisions. We've made really, really good decisions. Because the other council we're not allowed to mention, by the way, I've just lost £51 million and misallocated against the law. Against the law. Whereas we made the decision to invest in our residents and our businesses to make sure that people want to live here. We're creating jobs. And this budget, for me, is the icing on the cake. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. We're now going to have a recorded vote. Mrs. Dennis. Oh.
Okay. Councillor Adair.
Sorry.
It's 4 anyhow.
Councillor Bansal. Councillor Barney.
4.
Councillor Beardsall.
4.
Councillor Begum.
Abstain.
Councillor Brennan.
4.
Councillor Butler.
4.
Councillor Clark.
4.
Councillor Comberluck.
Abstain.
Councillor Cotty.
4.
Councillor Dickman.
4.
Councillor Gaunt.
Abstain.
Councillor Gowland.
Abstain.
Councillor Gray.
Abstain.
Councillor Howitt. Councillor Inglis.
4.
Councillor Mrs Jeffries. Councillor Jones.
4.
Councillor Richard Mallender. Councillor Sue Mallender.
Abstain.
Councillor Mason. Councillor Moore.
4.
Councillor Murray.
Abstain.
Councillor Phillips. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
4.
Councillor Robinson.
4.
Councillor Shaw.
4.
Councillor Sims.
4.
Councillor Mrs Stockwood.
4.
Councillor Thomas.
4.
Councillor Upton.
4.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Jen Walker. Councillor Rex Walker.
4.
Councillor Way. 4. Councillor Gordon Wheeler.
4.
Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. Councillor Williams. Not on the list.
Councillor Price. Councillor Price.
Councillor Price.
Oh dear.
Apologies.
We do apologise. You are here. I can see you're here. Anyway, the vote is carried. I think I'm going to propose that we have a short comfort break at this point. So if we could be back by 12:30. Unbelievable. Horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. No, I know she doesn't. I know, and this sniggering and ranting. Oh, absolutely. In fact, yeah, they face this way. I agree.
And I've told them about it.
Yeah. And ladies and gentlemen, would you please take your seats? Oh, God, I wish I got the gavel. Where is it? I don't know.
We need to find that.
It's usually in my office.
Oh, is it?
That's fine. Deputy Mayor? Right, we will be moving to item 10, but can I say, in the interest of trying to complete business of the meeting, I've been asked to consider reducing the time for all speeches on reports from 10 minutes to 5 for the mover of the report or the motion and 3 minutes for the responder. And I'm happy to approve that request. So we now move to item 10, council tax resolutions. Councillor Moore to move.
Well, I hope this is the statutory part of the budget. I hope this isn't controversial. In my mind, this isn't controversial. It's a statutory duty we have to do to declare the budget. I know you're timing me. The document contains the precepts of Notts County Council, Police and Crime Commissioner, the Fire Authority, ourselves, and individual town and parish councils. They're all listed at the back, the various town and parish councils, and the amounts are listed here. It's fairly straightforward. I don't really want to say, there's not an awful lot I can say about it. So it's best if I keep quiet and just shut up, I think, tonight, after what we've been through. So basically, I'm very happy to recommend that the council approves the council tax resolution as a statutory document. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cottage, a second.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm quite happy to second the recommendation to approve the council tax resolution and reserve my right to speak just in case I feel inspired.
Councillor Gaunt.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we've just got one little concern. Sorry. I also just looked up bragging, and bragging and pride are very similar words. The only thing that changes them is the word excessive that makes it bragging, and I'll just, it's entirely up to you what definition you go for. But our issue on this is that we've talked about it earlier. It's already come up. We've talked about our own views on raising council tax anyway. I'm not going to bring that up again. But it's the fact that we are raising council tax for everybody, but we're covering that this year, right? And we applaud that. I think that's a good thing because of the cost of living crisis. We do worry that that is baking it in for next year. So it'd be good if you could clarify that for us, because it looks like it will be baked into next year's budget because it's a rise for everybody. And when that funding that's covering that and taking that pressure off the residents disappears, then that's there next year. And then there's a potential year on year for raising council taxes we've been asked to do. We're worried that that will just mean that next year, as was mentioned, will be a double whammy. Now, it's not an attack, that's just a concern that we have with that. So we'd like some clarification on that, if you don't mind. I could go on about why council tax is regressive and all those things and all the stuff we talked about last year as to why we voted against it. We'll listen to what everyone has to say, if that's okay. Thank you. That's all I was going to say, really. That was our main concern.
Councillor Jones.
Yeah, in order to keep the council's budget in order during very inflationary times, we understand and support the arguments for increasing the council tax by 2% and not by the full amount possible. We note that has already been commented by myself and Councillor Gaunt that the bands A to D, the growth is offset by government and council money, and we'd just like to see how that's going to play out the year after this election. We would like to see more grades in the rating system so that costs falling on the poorest reduced and the higher grades for higher value properties. But sadly, this archaic system is set by this government. We'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you very much, Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, we recognise this is a formal part of the process. Any inspiration yet? No, just checking. Yes, happy to move to a vote on this one. Is interesting. This is the first independent one for Upper Saxondale as well. I thought it was. Yeah. Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Mallender. Councillor Thomas?
We support the motion, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Cotty? No, Councillor Moore?
Yeah, thank you for your support. I will come to your point. I think it's a very fair point. All I can say is the budget isn't written for next year, and I can't preempt the budget, what we're going to be doing. You're absolutely right. It could be built there. This year we found special money, ways of doing it. Who knows what's coming next year? The cost of living problems have not gone away. And I'm not a fortune teller. I can't do next year's budget, but I think it's a fair point that you raised. Thank you.
Right, we move. Anybody wish to make further comments? No, we move to the vote. All in favour? Anyone against? Abstentions? The vote is carried. Item 11, independent review of councillors' allowances. Councillor Moore to move.
Well, another one I hope's not too controversial today, councillors' allowance. At least everybody will know about this, and at least everybody will understand councillors' allowances because you all receive them. These allowances have to be reviewed every 4 years, and if this scheme is approved tonight, which I very hope it will be, it'll be implemented after the 2023 elections. The review is carried out by an independent panel, and their very comprehensive CVs are at the back. I hope you've all read them. Totally independent, and they have made a report. A lot of background research has been undertaken, which makes actually a very interesting read in this report, where you can clearly see the comparisons between each district council and their councillor payments. Some are very generous. In terms of the basic allowance, the review felt there is no justification for any change. And the comparisons show that Rushcliffe is really middle of the road on most of them. Some differ, some do not, but well within the acceptable range. However, what they do say is there should be an annual inflationary increase in line with that what was received by council employees, and that was implemented this year. To assist the review, councillors were invited to make comments, but only 6 actually made written submissions, and their points were taken into consideration. The panel met twice, and in their statement they said that the Rushcliffe scheme is basically accepted by councillors as being generally fair. It bears reasonable comparison to its nearby authorities, and it suitably rewards those with special responsibility. It also says it does not have an undue number of councillors entitled to a special responsibility, which if you look in this report, quite a few authorities do. One slightly controversial recommendation made by the panel was that the special allowance for the 3 scrutiny vice chairs be removed. However, following further discussions with officers and ourselves regarding the important, I've always felt vice chairs are important. You've got to be ready, you've got to be there, you've got to be ready to step up, you've got to read the paper, you've got to be prepared. So we decided to reject this part of the report and retain these roles and the commensurate payments. It's an important review. It's been very thorough. However, at the end of the day, not a lot has changed. The recommendations are in the paper, but just finally, there was one comment by one councillor in their submission, and they said, I think the general mix and spread of the current scheme is appropriate for the various different roles and responsibilities. And I couldn't have put it better myself. So I'm happy to recommend from A to D the recommendations in the report. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan, second.
Yes, I'm happy to second. I'm happy to second the recommendation. I reserve the right to speak.
Thank you. Councillor Begum.
Good evening, everyone.
As you know, that the cost of living, firefighters, teachers, nurses, civil servants, railway workers have been fighting for a pay rise, and we don't feel that it's the right time to sort of make those changes right. So we know you need to do the review, which we obviously recommend that the review should take place, but there is the allowance staying for the deputy, stays the same.
Thank you, Councillor Begum. Councillor Jones.
We'll be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender. Which Councillor Mallender?
Me again, apparently. Yeah, firstly, I'd like to say I'm glad that we're looking at this. It's really important. And again, we're at the end of our council term. This is not just about us here. It's also potentially about some of the other folks here and elsewhere around the borough. And it affects who is able to say, can I take time out from my work? Can I afford childcare? Can I afford to spend the time for my evening for whatever job I do? What are my personal circumstances to stand for election? So it's not just about us and the situation we're in now. It's about the kind of people who may be wanting to stand for council, wanting to put themselves forward, feeling that they want to participate in the democracy and the democratic life of our council. It's keeping it to inflation. I think that's fine for us. Obviously, wouldn't be in favour of increasing above and beyond that. We are a borough council. I don't think that we merit having a massive increase in the way that some of the other authorities, not just the ones mentioned in here, but other authorities in other parts of the country have been looking at increasing. We do need to keep it in line with what's happening out there in the rest of the country. So I'll be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Thomas.
No comment, Madam Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Rex Walker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll be brief. Yes, I'll be supporting the recommendation too. I would also like just to briefly say, I do think there are some missed opportunities here for saving some costs, especially around the vice chairs. But the main point, I think it's very notable that part of the justification for maintaining the status quo was that only 5 of us made representations to the panel, and the implication is that therefore we must be all happy and think that everything's good. But I hope that next time round more councillors will afford themselves the opportunity of contributing to requests for views, if only to confirm that we are happy that implication isn't there and it's made more clear. 5 out of 44, I think, is a particularly disappointing contribution from us on this matter.
Thank you. Councillor Purdue-Horan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In the 20 years that I've been a member of this council, I've been very privileged and fortunate to hold a number of positions, including vice chairman, if I recall, to Councillor Nigel Lawrence, and myself, the chairman of Governance Scrutiny Group. As a vice chair, I believed that I made a contribution, and I certainly felt that my vice chair, when I was a chairman, certainly made valuable contributions into the process. So I am extremely pleased that Councillor Moore and the ruling group, I assume, are supporting the continuation of recognising the roles of vice chairs. I sometimes felt in the collective responsibility of a group whip over the years that I've sometimes had to swallow salami slicing of councillors' allowances or positions over the years. And I think it's important that we as councillors demonstrate that we value councillors' contributions, not just that they value for money. I think actually all of us here over the last 4 years have provided excellent value
to Rushcliffe and its residents. But I think given the general environment we have in politics today, from national politics going down to local politics, there is a danger of diminishing the unique position that we have, which is servants of the people, but also leaders within our communities. And that includes whatever we do in this chamber. But there is a lot of intangibles that the independent panels don't see
30 seconds,
in our
Councillor
contributions
Horan.
outside the chamber. And I would suggest, Madam Mayor, for consideration in the future, that we consider a democratically elected person to join the great and the good on the independent panels. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Brennan?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Yes, I'm not sure if I quite understood Councillor Begum's point, but I think she was saying that because we shouldn't accept this inflation-related rise because other members of the public sector are also seeking an inflation-related. Okay, well, the unions seem to make the case that because one group of workers is getting a pay rise is not an argument against another group of workers getting a pay rise. So I'm not really sure what the point was with regard to our own allowances. I do fully support what Councillor Mallender said and Councillor Clergy-Horan, that it's really important that the allowances make access to the council for all members of the community a reasonable thing to do. We need to reflect on the fact that councillors themselves are also experiencing the cost of living challenges, and it's very important that we don't put people off standing for office because they feel they would be out of pocket or unable to fulfil their obligations in doing so because they don't have a cost of living rise or inflation related rise to their allowances. And so because of that, I would very much like to second and support.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Before I turn to Councillor Moore, I believe Councillor Gaunt's indicated.
Hi, thank you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, I was just going to clarify, I think, to help clear up what we were saying. I think it's a personal feeling of being uncomfortable as people who work in the public sector in our jobs, where we're currently having to fight to have our wages risen by less than this amount, percentage-wise. And that's being at the moment, and I'm trying not to be political, it's been being very difficult. We're having to fight often with strike action, which people are uncomfortable with doing. And in that circumstance, right now, we're not comfortable with approving this because we think this should wait until those public sector arguments and disputes have been settled. And then we can say, fair enough, we should do that now. Because I think it just doesn't look good optically. It doesn't feel comfortable for me to go back into my work tomorrow and say, well, I just gave for a 6% pay rise for myself. Like, so it just doesn't feel comfortable. That's all. We're not trying to attack. We're just saying we don't feel comfortable with that. So go ahead and do it. Yeah, that's what we'll do. That's fine. So just to clarify, that's the reason. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Councillor Gowland.
Thank you. Much the same point. We aren't a trade unionised group. Clearly, we're elected. It's a very different situation. It's an honour and a privilege to be here. However, we want to make sure that honour and privilege is available to everybody in the community. So it's very important that councillor allowances do provide recompense for the time people are not at work. We also noticed the times of meetings might also recommend support that. However, as Councillor Gaunt has said, you know, when there are people fighting at the moment for pay rises of less than this amount, we don't feel able to support this. That's not to say we don't support a rise, but we don't support this rise.
Thank you. I return to Councillor Moore.
Well, that's an excellent point. Excellent point. The thing is, as a councillor, you don't have to accept it. In your job, you accept it. In your work role, you accept it. If you don't want the pay rise, turn it down. And that is within your rights to do. And that is for everybody. And I do understand your strength of feeling and everything else. But in this environment that we operate in, if you don't want it, don't accept it. I'm happy to move the recommendation. I suggest we go to the vote, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? I declare the vote carried then. Right, we move to item 12, appointment of deputy electoral registration officers. Councillor Robinson to move.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is just an administration item, really. This is just a recommendation that we have some resilience to the organisation and we appoint 3 additional electoral officers. There's an awful phrase called wet signing. It basically means I think people have to sign properly. Okay, yeah, but it has to be done. It's manually. So the recommendation is in front of you today, please, that we can just appoint 3 individuals there who can assist the electoral officer to wet sign in terms of the election coming up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor English to second.
Thank you. Yeah, so it's an administration requirement, and I'm happy to second that proposal. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Walker. Councillor Jones. Councillor Mulliner. Councillor Thomas.
We support the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor English, do you wish to say anything further? Councillor Robinson, no. All those in favour? There we are, carried. We now move to item 13, notice of motions. Again, the light of time and the fact we have 4 motions, I'm going to shorten the time, proposing the motions, the person proposing the motions speaks 5 minutes, no more, and councillors speak for 3 minutes, no more. The first motion is proposed by Councillor Thomas and seconded, I believe, by Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. As most councillors are aware, residents in the larger new estates pay a charge in addition to their council tax for management of public open space on their estate. They are in a fundamentally different position to people on older estates. It could be argued that this is unfair. You may say that they bought their houses knowing this and had a choice to buy elsewhere. This may be true, but it doesn't help solve the problem. And of course, if this continues, there will be less choice over time. About 1/3 of the homes in Eastleigh are now subject to these charges. Councillor Way will explain how the agreements go way beyond a modest charge for cutting the grass that new homeowners may have been expecting, including future liability for capital works to playgrounds, car parks and drainage ponds, which could land residents with huge bills. Once residents start to understand the true nature of the arrangement, they believe the public open space is theirs because they pay for it. In Eastleigh, we've seen unacceptable instances where children have been challenged for using a local playground and dog walkers for exercising their dogs in a country park. The residents are the ones paying for the maintenance and also for any damage, fly tipping, collection of litter and dog fouling. So it seems logical to them that the facilities are for their use only, but it is public open space available to people who don't live on the estate. The Section 106 agreements differ significantly between different developments. In some cases, the public open space is still owned by the developer. In other cases, it has been passed to a company responsible for managing it. We are arguing that although the decision to move to this system was taken in good faith, it's not working and will lead to further problems in future. We wish the options to be reviewed with a view to moving to a different system. 3 alternative models are described in the motion. The first is to revert to the previous policy where Rushcliffe adopts the land and takes on responsibility for it in perpetuity in exchange for a commuted sum paid by the developer. The problem is seen to be that the commuted sum only lasts for a number of years, and after this, Rushcliffe foots the bill. I would argue that this is fair and reasonable. The new residents will, after all, be paying council tax. All Rushcliffe residents may have to contribute a little too via their council tax, but then they will all have the use of the public open space and facilities across all these new estates. So that would be our preferred model. The second model would be for Rushcliffe to adopt the land and itself charge the residents for services, possibly by defining additional expense areas. The benefit of this would be residents would be dealing with a publicly accountable body, having an ethical, not-for-profit, social and environmental focus, rather than a company whose objective is to make a profit. Unexpected large bills, such as failure of drainage equipment, could be smoothed in some way. This is our second choice model. The residents still pay, but there is much more control. Accountability is important. At the moment, residents have to deal with faceless entities, making it hard to raise and to settle issues. Sometimes there is even a charge for asking questions. The third model we've identified in the motion is the possibility of the land ownership and responsibility passing to the residents themselves. This could be applicable in gated estates, for example, but we don't favour it in general. So the main part of this motion asks for the system to be changed by April 2024 for future new estates in Rushcliffe. A year should be enough time to achieve this. There may also be opportunity for change in the estates where Section 106 agreements have been signed, but houses have not yet been built. And we should look at estates in this situation urgently, including Fareham. In the last sentence of the motion, we're also asking for action to help residents already subject to these schemes. We hope the council will explore options to change the agreements. I hope you will support the motion. I would like to request a recorded vote, please, including on any amendment debates and amended a motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Way.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Thomas has clarified the current situation with open space fees and suggested some feasible alternatives. I will expand on how this has impacted house owners in unexpected financial terms. Management companies have imposed a whole range of additional charges that have nothing to do with open spaces. I have a list here of some of them from one estate. There are 26 items charged for, and this is by no means an exhaustive list. Just a few examples. A full seller's information pack, £249. Getting this quicker costs an additional £105. Permission to apply for alterations, £110. Retrospective consent to alterations, £475. Both vendor and purchaser signing a document to be allowed to sell or buy a property, £620 each. Remember, these are charges in addition to the normal conveyancing fees and the planning fees paid to the local council. Change a mortgage lender, for example, at the end of Help to Buy scheme, £115. And a way to discourage discussion, answers to questions, £30. In 2 years, some have seen the annual charge increase by 43%. These charges exclude VAT, so add on another 20%. None of these apply to owners of older homes. Neither do they have anything to do with managing open space. In fact, there are consistent complaints that the open spaces are not managed properly anyway. So they're left with a huge charge that doesn't do what it's supposed to do, while imposing a raft of irrelevant fees. The fees are unregulated, with confusion over the source of inflation rates used. Management fees vary widely, and there's no consistency even within one village on comparable estates. Most house owners don't realise that there's a charge on their home, and the management company name is on the deeds. This can give rise to difficulties when selling. I've heard many stories from homeowners to whom this has come as a surprise. It would appear that conveyancers rarely mention it. In fact, some seem to have been totally unaware of it when asked by the buyer. And sales details rarely mention this. In some areas, residents have been offered incentives to use solicitors recommended by the developer. The management companies also have the right to impose extra charges for clearing up fly tipping, repairs due to vandalism and unexpected issues within open space. The prospect of receiving huge bills hangs over residents like a sword of Damocles. Some residents have described feeling threatened with subsequent effects on mental and physical well-being. I urge the council to seriously and urgently examine the subject of unreasonable charges and protect and support our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Way. Councillor Upton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I'm correct, you've given me 3 minutes, which may be a good or bad thing, depending on your point of view. So I'll not repeat what I said to the citizens' questions in response to Mr. Robinson Green, given my time restraint. Essentially, I think on this side, we understand the issues that's been eloquently described. As I say, I'm very much personally aware of many of them, having experienced them myself. The problem I have with the motion is the 3 bullet points, the policies 1, 2 and 3 that Councillor Thomas alluded to, and her preference for policy 1, I believe, or models. Whether we call them a model or a policy, I'm calling them a policy. And for this meeting, I think, in fact, I would say I cannot agree to policy changes of this magnitude in this forum, this meeting this evening. So I would like, with your permission, to present an alternative motion at the appropriate time. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Upton?
Yeah, I'm happy to second, Madam Mayor, and reserve right to speak.
Thank you. Can we put your proposed amendment?
If you could put my proposed amendment, Madam Mayor, on the screen, I'd be grateful. This really is just giving some additional wording, some clarity on certain areas of the motion. It's largely unchanged, although you'll see there's a cut-off point from the original motion, which takes out the 3 models. If everybody's had a chance to read that, I mean, the essential point is we understand the issue, and we're prepared to take it to scrutiny and try and get that agreed by April next year. I don't know if the original mover wants to comment.
Councillor Wheeler.
I reserve a right to speak to the end. Thank you.
Councillor Jones.
I'm not sure whether you're being picky or not. What's wrong with the options that were listed? Because you've heard very eloquently the agonies on these estates. And it just seems to me to be a bit more specific about looking at the various options, rather than allowing the possibility to confirm the policy.
Councillor Thomas, do you accept the amendment?
I accept the amendment, Madam Mayor. It's not the amendment, it's not the motion we want, but we recognise that it'll come back, that everybody will vote against it. I will have a right to reply later on because I've accepted the amendment and have something else to say then. Thank you.
Councillor Clark.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to just make a couple of brief comments, because I actually largely agree with the original proposer and seconder in terms of the spirit of this. I just want to make clear, really, first of all, I was quoted in the citizens' question near the end as saying unforeseen.
It's a point of order.
Yes, we're debating the substantive motion because she's accepted.
Yes. We're debating the substantive motion because you have accepted. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just, as I say, I was just clarifying. I believe, well, I was quoted as saying unforeseen circumstances. This may be a small point, but I think I used the phrase unintended consequences. But anyway, I'm glad that Councillor Thomas accepted that we introduced this policy taken in good faith, and I'm glad that was done. And obviously I was fairly instrumental in this at the time because I was leader of the council at the time. So the problem was that there were escalating unsustainable costs in relation to these open spaces. So we were trying to mitigate those escalating costs to the council and to the council taxpayer. So I agree that there have been some unintended consequences which we hadn't foreseen, I don't think, or at least hadn't realised. And so I agree that this is a great opportunity to really look at this again in a very comprehensive way, send it back to scrutiny. And the reason that we don't want those 3 bullet points there is because who knows, maybe there might be more options, but who knows? So it's a good opportunity to really drill into this. And I welcome that this would be a good opportunity for a good scrutiny, and let's amend the policy, no doubt in some way, so that those consequences are no longer impacting on our residents. So I support the amended motion, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Walker, do you wish to? No. Councillor Jones. Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, since Councillor Thomas has accepted the amended motion, I do support the motion still, but I would like to still hear what Councillor Thomas has to say in her summing up, really. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Councillor Gowland has indicated.
I'm only being quick. Abbey Wood is a trailblazing ward. Abbey Wood and Abbey Park started this process. It adopted this system back in the 70s, and everybody is paying the price. Rushcliffe, the county, there's endless trouble over maintaining the land. So all I can say is we should sort this out now, because we're storing up a lot of mess and muddle for the future. You know, the developers move on, they sell on, they lose interest. It's going to cause a lot of problems. It needs sorting out now.
Councillor Gaunt.
Well, thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just going to say I normally freak out a little bit when the detail's removed and the last sentence like that comes in, because I think that doesn't really pin you down to anything. But on this occasion, actually, I think as long as the public maintain their engagement in this process and push for those opportunities to improve the situation and are sort of engaged with about what the problems are that they're facing, and the councillors do their job properly, we really can make that work. So I'm for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gaunt. Councillor Barney.
Thank you. I'd like to thank Councillor Thomas and Councillor Way for bringing this forward this evening. I appreciate there's residents here this evening from Eastleigh, and I'm very aware myself from comments made by residents in Eastleigh that this is a real and palpable issue. And I think Councillor Thomas was also right to identify the potential ramifications of this on fair and pastures. But there's also a wider question. Of course, there's a national conversation also going on about this. And I know that in Parliament, this is also being scrutinised and looked at. So can I suggest that as part of our scrutiny, we also reflect on what's going on in the national situation? We don't get ourselves committed into legally impossible and difficult things, but we have to find a way through this, and there has to be a better way of managing open spaces on new build estates. I completely concur and agree.
Thank you, Councillor Barney. Councillor Robinson.
Yeah, it was just a small point, and just building on what Matt said, we've actually fed some feedback into the Levelling Up and Planning Bill about this. Councillor Jones and Councillor Will know the issues we have at Ed Walton now are absolutely exactly the same. We really appreciate it. So I think the whole chamber agrees that we have an issue. It's how we get this forward. And I think this motion will allow us to move forward with it. But we should be aware that the government are looking at some legislation, and one of the routes they're looking at is actually to legalise, if you like, and put structures around these management companies and give them regulation. And I think actually that would be a lot better than anything that we could actually do.
Thank you, Councillor Robinson. Councillor Way, you reserve your right to speak.
I did actually speak, Madam Mayor, but I would like to say some other comments if that's allowed. Councillor Clark has, am I allowed to or not? Different motion. Oh.
Yes, you did speak.
Oh, beg pardon. So it's Councillor Thomas. Sorry, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Thomas, you should be replying.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'd just like to confirm that we haven't brought this motion for political reasons. And I think we're seeing the impact of this first in East League because we've had the houses first, although I'm interested to hear that it's also being heard about in Edwalton. Emails from distressed and angry residents like Emrys will be hitting all your inboxes soon. Ratcliffe, Keyworth, Reddington, West Bridgford, Copgrave, Bingham, Gotham, everywhere where new houses, new estates have been completed. This is happening all over the country and other councils are starting to change their policies. Rushcliffe has got a real opportunity to be with the leaders on this, relieving residents from this nightmare situation and making Rushcliffe a better and more attractive place to live. If we go back to the commuted sum model, it could ultimately lead to a small council tax increases across Rushcliffe, but probably not significant enough to threaten our place in that hallowed lower quartile. Our second option gives you an acceptable way round this anyway. It's not just Rushcliffe that's in this mess, and as you say, the government is looking at it. But as for the government sorting it out, please don't wait. There's really little sign of movement, despite the government being aware of the problem since 2017. Other councils are starting to vote with their feet, and Rushcliffe should too. We can't take any more time. Every day we delay, more people are caught in this trap. We wanted the council to commit to change the policy, and the amended motion is not the motion we wanted, but it does commit you as councillors to make a decision within the next year to say you will change the system or continue as we are. It doesn't just let things drift on. This motion doesn't let you just take this item to scrutiny and then do nothing. A decision has to be made within a year, and that is what the motion commits you to. So, yeah, that's all I wanted to say. Thank you very much, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We'll now go to a vote on the motion, and it's been requested that it be a recorded vote.
Councillor Adair. Councillor Bansal. Councillor Barney. Councillor Bearsall. Councillor Begum. Councillor Brennan. Councillor Butler. Councillor Clark. Councillor Cumberlack.
Abstain.
Councillor Cotty. Councillor Dickman. Councillor Gaunt. Councillor Gowland. Councillor Gray. Councillor Howitt. Councillor Inglis. Councillor Mrs Jeffries. Councillor Jones. Councillor Price. Councillor Richard Mallender. Councillor Sue Mallender. Councillor Mason.
Abstain.
Councillor Moore. Councillor Murray. Councillor Phillips. Councillor Purdy-Horan. Councillor Robinson. Councillor Shaw. Councillor Sims. Councillor Mrs Stockwood. Councillor Thomas. Councillor Upton. Councillor Verdi. Oh, no, he's not here. Councillor Jen Walker. Councillor Rex Walker. Councillor Way. Councillor Gordon Wheeler. Councillor Jonathan Wheeler. Councillor Williams.
That is then carried. And we move on to the next motion, which is brought by Councillor Way. Put it the right way around this time.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There's been a considerable increase in the use of artificial turf recently, particularly during lockdown, with some companies reporting increases as high as 65%. The disadvantages of artificial grass are wide-ranging. Artificial turf is a plastic material made from fossil fuels in an energy-intensive process. The useful life of artificial grass is around 10 to 20 years. Although it can be recycled, this is an expensive specialist process. It can take 450 years to biodegrade and gives rise to microplastic pollution entering the soil and water systems and then beyond. Artificial grass creates a large carbon footprint, including the manufacturing, transportation and installation of the product. Artificial grass doesn't absorb CO2 or release oxygen. Natural lawns have a role in sequestering carbon. Artificial grass can contribute to global warming by absorbing significantly more radiation than living grass and by displacing living plants that could remove carbon dioxide through photosynthesis. Artificial grass reaches significantly greater temperatures than those reached by natural grass under the same weather conditions. New York's Department of Environmental Conservation suggests that areas of artificial grass in direct sunlight can be as much as 15 to 20 degrees hotter than natural grass. The Director of Conservation at the London Wildlife Trust says, "You're using fossil fuels to make it. You have to remove a significant amount of soil to lay it. So you're reducing the direct and indirect porosity of the soil. You're removing habitat which a wide range of species are dependent on." The head of environmental horticulture for the RHS says we need all the habitat we can get to support biodiversity and combat the climate crisis. And by putting down plastic grass, you're removing the potential of that garden space to deliver other beneficial environmental services. It restricts access to natural materials like leaf litter and grass clippings, essential for feeding soil organisms like worms and microscopic animals, and keeping the soil healthy, while the leaching of microplastics can harm wildlife. One of the claims made in support of artificial lawns is that it saves water as it doesn't need watering. However, suppliers recommend cleaning on a monthly basis by hosing with water, then with a chemical cleaner, then with water again. This extract from the consultation for the Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill 22 demonstrates the intentions of government. Chapter 7.7 states, "The government has already set out its view that artificial grass has no value for wildlife. Its installation can have negative impacts on both biodiversity, drainage for flood prevention or alleviation, and plastic pollution. We will consider how we can make sure that our policy and design guidance fully supports habitats and routes for wildlife, as well as halting the threat to wildlife created by the use of artificial grass by developers, noting the importance of some uses of artificial grass, such as on sports pitches. The use on sports pitches is understandable in some respects, but the hope is that by the time these have reached the end of their useful life, there will be more environmentally friendly alternatives available. Artificial grass is not a suitable play surface for children. It gets very hot and can cause friction burns. It's recognised that green space has an invaluable benefit for mental health. The sterile environment of artificial grass and plastic plants is nowhere near as effective as natural surroundings. We lose the opportunity to watch birds foraging in the lawn, finding food and nesting materials. We're unlikely to see hedgehogs enjoying time on an artificial lawn. It has nothing to offer them. We lose the tactile and sensory benefits of real grass. Children are able to sit and play on a soft lawn, make daisy chains, and pluck a blade of grass to whistle with. It's sad to think that so many children now miss out on such simple pleasures. So I ask for your support with this motion so that we can remove this damaging practice and promote natural grass and planting through education, information, and changes in future policies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Way. Councillor Thomas, I believe you're seconding the motion.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think I can honestly say that I've never, ever agreed with Michael Gove on anything at all before. But for sure, this fake grass is dreadful stuff for all the reasons Councillor Way has described. The so-called Levelling Up and Regeneration Bill talks about preventing fake grass being laid in new housing developments. Ideally, it should be taken further so that installing it is discouraged in existing developments too. This motion is about Rushcliffe travelling this path as far as we can through education and policy changes. It's important to understand the reasons why people install fake grass instead of real grass, and perhaps once we understand this, we can showcase other solutions to their problems. Often it's about maintenance, with fake grass being seen as an easier option, despite the fact that for the cost of installation, it should be possible to pay someone to maintain a grass lawn for many years. There may be anxiety about engaging a gardener, and promotion of a trusted council-provided service may just be part of the solution. The need to water real lawns may be swaying people, and they may just need to be reassured that there's absolutely no shame in having a brown front lawn in dry weather, and that it will green up again when it rains. And there are other alternatives to real grass that are better for the environment than plastic grass. Raised beds, managing lawns as meadows, creating a wildflower garden. Plants other than grass can be used for lawns, requiring less mowing and more tolerant to the drier, hotter weather we can expect as climate change starts to bite. All lawns can be replaced by ground cover, planted areas with weed suppression by means of natural mulch. So let's get some ideas out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. We'll now move to discussion. Councillor Brennan.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, rather like Councillor Thomas very rarely agrees with Mr Gove, I very rarely agree with both Councillor Way and Councillor Thomas on all of the issues that you've raised, and I do, and we do. We support the sentiment behind the motion. I'm not, in the interest of time, brevity and lateness, I won't go on at length repeating all of the things you said about this stuff, this horrible stuff. I think we can all agree that we don't like to see it. It's disappointing to see artificial grass where lawns used to be, and even the most closely mown, neat and tidy, weed-free lawns are still vital oases for nature and for biodiversity. There are some really important exceptions, and I'm grateful that Councillor Way did mention sports fields and pitches, because of course there are important uses for them that we wouldn't wish to see our policy discouraging, and in fact we're very proud of the new artificial pitches that we've just opened and created. All of that said, and I won't repeat the damage, you're absolutely right, the extent of the damage that large and extensive areas of fake grass can generate, but I do have a bit of a dilemma. Artificial grass is widely available. It's not, it's perfectly legal for people to use artificial grass if they wish to. You talk about changing policy to prevent people from using artificial grass or developers from using artificial grass. And that's not possible within the current regulations. And I'm not sure we would feel comfortable with trying to enforce something that is perfectly legal and people have a choice if they wish to use it. Some of the new developments in particular have very small patches of grass at the front and at the rear, which doesn't justify the purchase of a lawnmower. There may be people with mobility issues, people with disabilities who cannot maintain a garden but would like to have a green space on their property. So we feel a little bit uncomfortable with saying to people, no, it's horrible stuff, you can't have it, despite the fact it's widely available and quite a reasonable choice in some circumstances. We couldn't create a blanket ban through planning policy, and we couldn't enforce it even if we tried. In terms of the council, wherever possible, we try to use natural living ground cover on our own land. We've mentioned the issue of playing pitches and playgrounds. It is the preferred surface option for the Football Foundation and the FA because it does last longer than grass, has cheaper maintenance, and allows for more hours of play each year due to its durability.
30 seconds, Councillor.
Right, okay. We already advise residents on wildlife habitat creation, and we do, of course, run our free tree planting scheme and can provide advice on alternatives to artificial grass. And there are natural ground covers rather than artificial grass that can be low maintenance as well, and I fully accept that. But because of the latter points that I've raised, I'd like to propose an amendment to the motion, please.
Which event you have 5 minutes rather than 3.
2 minutes. Oh,
5 minutes more now.
Oh, right. Oh, I could go back to what I was saying now. I won't. I'll keep it brief. So I'd like to change it to recognise the fact that there are certain circumstances in which the use of artificial grass can be justified, particularly on playing pitches and for some small scale decorative purposes. And I would like to suggest that we will undertake media campaigns rather than changes to policy to raise awareness of the negative impact on the natural environment and biodiversity of the extensive use of artificial grass. We fully support the sentiment behind the motion. We do not think it's for this council to tell people that they cannot use it in their own gardens, but we should do everything to educate people as to why we would recommend natural alternatives and why we would discourage the use in new developments and in gardens of extensive use of artificial grass.
I assume you have a seconder for this motion. Thank you, Councillor Buckler.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm very happy to second the amendment to the motion. And in the interest of brevity, all I will say is I agree absolutely with the original motion's ethos, but also I think this recommendation does just help tighten things down a little bit. And I also, from a personal point of view, I suspect that artificial grass, especially in a domestic situation, perhaps was one of those ideas that seemed like a good idea at the time when it first appeared, but frankly, it's not. And for all the reasons we've heard. So I'm very happy to second this amendment. Thank you.
Councillor Wade, do you accept the amendment?
No, I'm not happy with this amendment. First of all, I don't like the idea of the exception made for small-scale decorative purposes. I think it's an unnecessary addition to this this motion. And I also would like to think that we can look at future policies where these can be included, as the planning policy that I mentioned earlier is likely to ban this on new estates. So I think we should move towards trying to reduce and eliminate the use of this dreadful material as in existing gardens, parks and so on. So actually, I don't accept this amendment.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Jones. Oh. Hang on just a minute, you're connected. That's it, right.
Whichever motion is passed, I think the issue of microplastics in the ground and therefore in water supply and therefore in future generations' water is the most important, and that applies to plastic litter, of which plastic grass is but one.
Councillor Mallender.
I totally support Councillor Way in her rejection of the addition of the certain circumstances. Even if you look at playing fields, did you know playing field artificial grass is the second largest source of microplastics in the world after road surfacing and tyres? It's the second largest source on the things that we already have, that artificial turf on playing fields. So I'm sorry, and there are other sports people, I've just been looking them up, that do agree with me that they would prefer to play on proper grass. It's just, there's such a huge carbon footprint with manufacturing this stuff. Will the massive loss of biodiversity if you have even a small amount of plastic grass instead of having, if you're a disabled person, a raised bed that you can reach like they have at the facility in Lady Bay at Home Lodge. They have raised beds so that people in wheelchairs can do that, can grow real things in them, and they've got real worms in them and things. It cannot be recycled. It's made up of a variety of polyfluoroalkyl substances, or PFAs. That's a list of about 12,000 different chemicals that are used. They're needed to resist water and staining and heat. and they're linked to all sorts of medical problems and health problems in humans. Cancer, liver problems, thyroid, birth defects, kidney disease, decreased immunity. They can be absorbed through the skin, inhaled and ingested, and through open wounds. And particularly children are vulnerable to these. So I do not think we can say that playing pitches are a good idea to have artificial grass upon them. All PFAs, which is the short way of saying that, accumulate in the environment. Plants are unable to take root. Therefore, there are no invertebrates. There's no decomposition. There's no birds because there's no invertebrates and all the other things that depend on them in the food chain. People who sell it say, don't feed the birds in your garden because the bird poo gathers underneath it and smells. So you mustn't feed the birds. The droppings build up, and underneath there, because there's no organic matter, there's no earthworms. You get anaerobic rotting, which causes terrible smell, and they suggest spraying perfume on it, which is another chemical that we don't want to have. I could go on, but I really think we need to leave this motion as it is. Thank you.
You've had your 3 minutes. Councillor Sims.
Hello again. It seems I'm going out with a bang. I can't believe what I'm hearing. Real world, in the real world, people with kids that play football, that if they don't have artificial facilities to go to, they can't play football, damaging their mental health, damaging their health. As somebody who has a child that plays football, I don't see much damage, aggression when he goes there. It's a fantastic facility provided by this council. You've got to get these things into perspective. You know, we don't live in a sunny country where the grass is going to grow and it's going to drain and everything. So kids need to be able to play football and play sports. So artificial sports centres, as far as I'm concerned, in the real world need to exist. And the FA promotes them. Now, the other thing is, where do we stop with this? Saying policy that I don't have it and I wouldn't have it, but I can't put artificial grass down in my garden. I thought my house was my castle. What planet do you live on that you actually want to mandate people by policy of this authority that they can't do something in their house? Well, you're going to be telling me what car I can drive next. It's just ridiculous. You know, it's absolutely ridiculous. Small government, let people live. This is ridiculous, and the amendment is fit as I see it. And I would recommend that we go forward for this amendment because it ticks all the boxes as far as I'm concerned. Thank you.
Councillor Brennan, you have a right to reply.
Thank you. Well, I think it's been said. We agree with everything you've said about how awful and detrimental to the environment this stuff can be. We've also heard very eloquently from Councillor Sims why there needs to be some kind of nuance to our decision about this. And I am recommending that we take a vote on the amended motion to recognise the fact that there will be exceptions, but that we still will campaign to explain to people why this product is so unpleasant, so detrimental to the environment, to educate people on alternatives and to discourage its use. I think that's a fair stance for the council to take. Reasonable, real world, but understands the issues.
Thank you, Councillor Brennan. Councillor Way, you have a right of response.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I listened carefully with everything everybody said, and I actually think that a lot of the things that have been said don't undermine my original proposed motion. I didn't say at any point it should be banned. I did say that we should be trying to discourage it through education, publicity, and future policies, possibly when we look at new future local plans. Rushcliffe's received much praise and national recognition for its lead on practices to protect habitats and endangered species such as hedgehogs, protecting and reinstating and increasing the amount of hedges and hedgerow, reducing the pesticides and expanding the no-mow policy. All of these are a credit to the council and show a strong intention to improve the environment and help reverse climate change. This motion is the next step in this process, and we have the opportunity to encourage good practice, discourage damaging behaviour by publicity, policy and good examples. Thank you.
Right, we will now go to a vote on the amendment. Do we understand? The vote is on the amendment. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions?
No, so it's carried. So the substantive motion becomes the amended.
So the vote was carried. This is now the substantive motion. Does anybody else wish to speak? Right. In that event, Councillor Brennan to respond to the debate.
If you wish. Sorry, I thought I just had, sorry, this is now the substantive motion, and can I commend it to the vote, please?
Thank you. We'll now go to the vote. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? The vote is therefore carried. We only have 20 minutes. Okay, we're going to get through that. Right, well, we move to the next motion, which is to be put to the council by Councillor Jones.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. There are 4 reasons for this motion. The ID requirement is red tape. It is unnecessary cost on the public purse. Secondly, the acceptable forms of ID are predominantly held by older people. The ID requirements discriminate against young people. The UK government's, the third reason is the government's own commission research found that those less likely to hold any form of photo ID were those with severely limited disabilities, the unemployed, and people without qualifications, and those who had never voted before. That is why the motion calls for the council to send information to all those who became 18 since the 2019 election. Fourthly, the Election Commission concluded that there was no evidence of large-scale fraud in the general and local and European elections held in 2019. There were 32 million votes cast in the general election and many others in local elections and the European Parliament. The Commission said that out of 142 allegations about voting irregularities, just 1 led to a prosecution and that was in the European election. Madam Mayor, there are far more Tory MPs subject to sexual misconduct allegations than there have been convictions for illegal voting. This is another measure by the miscreants in power to limit the historical freedoms of the people. I commend this motion to the council.
Thank you, Councillor Jones. Do you have a seconder? Councillor Mallender.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Well, for reasons of brevity, I think I should be very brief rather than I was last time. There's evidence from countries with voter ID rules, but which don't have a mandatory ID card, like the USA, that this kind of ID-led voting affects marginalised groups far more than other people. So basically, the richer you are, the more likely you are to have an ID. If you can't afford foreign holidays, you don't have a passport. If you don't drive, you don't have a driving licence. So as Councillor Jones has said, people with disabilities, the unemployed, people with no qualifications, those who've never voted before, these are all people who are less likely to be able to vote in this situation. 2% of people in this country have no ID, including expired. 4% have no recognisable ID. Should we be spending £180 million across the country extra a decade to in order to solve a problem, a sledgehammer to crack a nut, that it doesn't exist? UK elections are safe and secure. It's not like in some other countries. There's no vote early, vote often here. And as Councillor Jones has said, they're very well run, and there were only 33 people, allegations of impersonation, in fact, let alone actual ones, in a poll of over 58 million voters in 2019. Is it fair that we expect our council workers that are on polling stations to have to slow things up a bit while they're checking 10-year-old photo IDs or driving licenses in previous names if people have got married or changed their names for some other reason? Should we really be stretching our already overstretched local government officers in this way? So I ask you please to vote for this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Well, firstly, Madam Mayor, I think this is national legislation. We're not here to make legislation. It is actually national legislation made by Parliament, and whatever we vote for here is not going to change the Parliament's decision. So I'm not quite sure what the point of the motion is. There's two issues here. If you don't support it, then in terms of voter ID, then obviously they come on to the right measures of ID. As a group, we actually support voter ID, and I'll tell you why. This isn't an experiment. Because when I look at this, this has actually been live in Northern Ireland since 2003 and has had no detrimental effect on democracy. You haven't said anything about that at all. So it actually has been live, has been run, and has been accepted. It is also live at the moment in France, Germany, Austria, Switzerland, Canada, real beacons of democracy. They have voter ID and it is working. So the government's done its research and actually brought this in and said, democracy. I'm sorry, you mentioned prices of democracy. For me, there isn't a price of democracy. Democracy at all costs, as far as I'm concerned. And we all know, remember Ty Hamlets? Yeah. How many people have been prosecuted for treason in the last 2 years? You know how many? None. So we get rid of the treason laws then, do we? We don't need treason laws because no one's been prosecuted. Yeah, the government's trying to be proactive in making sure that democracy is preserved, and it should actually be admired for it. It's done the research, it's working in other countries. The second issue you raise about education, I accept that there is a job to do, and I'm delighted. Rushcliffe reports, front page, everybody, 50,000 going to everybody. Social media, TV adverts. Yes, and in Rushcliffe, this is 2% of the population will have the ID, and that is why they can come in. They've got the certification that can actually be given as well. Every measure is being taken to make sure that voter ID is valid, and it is all based on the experience of democracies who brought it in, and it absolutely works. So I'm sorry if we're sitting here saying the government are trying this, experimenting. I'd say, oh yeah, concerns. This is actually proven that it does not. So what you're saying, sorry, is actually incorrect. We will not be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Councillor Walker. Councillor Thomas.
Sorry. Yes, I'm supporting the motion. I'm not aware of overwhelming evidence to justify the change. The motion recognises the differential impact that this will have on younger voters, and it could be argued, as Councillor Mallender has, that the new requirements will also have more impact on other groups, certain social economic groups, and perhaps older people. And to be honest, one can't help wondering about political motivation in bringing this forward at this time.
Councillor Robinson.
In that people who vote a certain way might be more likely to A, have the ID in the first place, and B, be more likely to go and get it to a council if they haven't got it. The ID requirement can be overcome by requesting a postal vote, but I'd argue that these are much more open to abuse, including possible coercion within the home. So, I mean, I support the motion and urge officers to continue to do everything possible with the publicity work to ensure that as many of our residents as possible are prepared. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jones.
Yeah, obviously the group opposite are going to vote against this. Many of the countries that Simon Robinson referred to are countries that carry IDs as a matter of law. That does not apply here. And I already said the government's own research established a number of groups who were less likely to vote because of their situation. And the Electoral Commission found very little evidence of voter fraud. So it is a lot of money chasing no problem. It's not democracy. It's the opposite of democracy. It is limiting. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We will go to the vote then. All those in favour? All those against? Any abstentions? Carried. The motion therefore is carried. Oh, sorry, lost.
Sorry.
Got that the wrong way round. We only have 10 minutes for the next motion. So I'm afraid to say it will have to be put over until the next council meeting. I would, before I close the meeting, I would like to say there is a councillor here who is retiring, who has dedicated many, many, many years to this council, and she would like to have the opportunity of speaking and thanking officers. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. All my life, I've never considered my age, but recently I was reminded in a rather painful way. I'm undergoing medical treatment and my body, because it's old and knackered and worn out, is not responding. So I thought, come on, Christine, you better get your act together pretty quickly. And that's why I am here tonight. All of us who work here as councillors owe our success to our chief executive, our legal department, and all our officers. Our officers are hidden upstairs, up there. You don't come across them unless you go up there and knock on the door, and suspiciously they will allow you in. But they are the people who allow us to make a success of the work that we do. And I'm here this evening specifically to offer the thanks, I am quite sure, of all of you to all those officers for what they do. You know, we attend meetings, and come on, let's be truthful here. I've seen people undo their envelope and have a look at what they're supposed to be doing. Come on, own up and put a penny in the box. We've all been there. They extricate us from the most serious gaffes. They are wise, they are kind, and we don't always treat them properly. Some of them leave home very early in the morning and we go yakketing on at night, and they don't get home till late, and they miss precious time with their families. So I'm quite sure that on behalf of all those people, I and everyone else here would like to thank them from the bottoms of our hearts for all that we do. Now then, some of you know I live in Cotgrave. What an incredible place to be. I went there 60 years ago on the day I married, and I love it to bits. And I've been quite unscrupulous in using my political power to get what I want for Cotgrave. And I have to tell you this, in my part of the village, if anything happens, I don't know if they send smoke signals, but within 10 minutes, everybody at the other end of the village knows what's going on. And the other day, I was going to the post office and there's a large number of people waiting at the bus stop. And in Cotgrave, we're quite unique. We're not bothered about grammar or double negatives. And someone shouted across, "Hey up, Christine." So I said, "Hello. Is it true you're not standing again for the council?" "No, I'm not standing for the borough and I'm not standing for the town." "Well, thank God for that," came the reply. "I won't have to vote Tory anymore." Thank you.
Well, if I can just say, Christine, thank you very much for that. And thank you very much for all you have done for Cotgrave and for Rushcliffe and for us all. And you've been an absolute inspiration. Thank you very much. And I wish you all the best. Thank you. And that's the end of the meeting.